Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sparkplug. Sparkplug is a series where we interview women in the fields of STEAM and politics. Today, we'll be interviewing Cara, a portfolio manager from Advance Robotics Manufacturing, or ARM. I'm Risha, the team captain, main engineer, and the lead for public relations.
Hi, my name is Swati. I'm the lead of hardware and social media.
So before we get started, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor to be on this show. Love connecting with girls and women in STEM. As Varsha mentioned, my name is Cara Mazzarini. I am a technology portfolio manager with Advance Robotics Manufacturing. We're based in Pittsburgh, PA. My background is in mechanical engineering, and prior to working at ARM, which is a research consortium, I was an engineer with NAVSEA, so engineers for the U.S. Navy.
So was there any clubs that you enjoyed growing up?
Oh, let's see, clubs that I enjoyed growing up. Yeah, I was one of those kids who had very wide and broad interests. So I played sports. I played volleyball in high school. And I also was really active in our some of the student clubs, like Students Against Drunk Driving. I was also involved in French club, really anything that was a good excuse to spend some time with my classmates and learn something new. Also spent a lot of time volunteering in different capacities. Habitat for Humanity was something that I really enjoyed and spent a lot of my free time doing at that time. Personally, I was not a part of the engineering club. Honestly, I don't even know if they had one at my high school at the time, but it really wasn't on my radar. However, I did get some exposure to engineering through a program that's still running today, actually. It's hosted by the Society of American Military Engineers. It was an engineering camp over the summer that a teacher and mentor recommended I apply to, and that's really what springboarded me into engineering as a career and opened my eyes to all the cool things that were possible in that field.
So you mentioned that you have a background in mechanical engineering. Was there a particular reason that you chose to go into that field?
Definitely. So when I was looking at my options for which major to choose, personally, I was kind of torn between civil engineering and mechanical. I think that when you look across the types of engineering, it's important to know what your interests are as far as like the classes you're taking right now. Obviously, the common story, if you're good at math and science, you should think about engineering, and that's true. Personally, I really liked physics. Math was a given. And I liked chemistry too, but it wasn't something that I was really passionate about. So for me, that was easy to kind of set that one aside. And then what's really cool about civil engineering is that so many of those professions are systems that people use throughout their everyday lives. So there's so much reliance that we have on things that civil engineers design and maintain that we don't even realize. That I think that's really appealing and something people should consider if having a career that has a direct impact on people and people's lives is important to you. Ultimately, the reason I went for mechanical engineering was because I couldn't make up my mind. And mechanical engineering touches so many different industries and so many different types of work. I thought, okay, this is kind of a good bet to see, get a little further in my education and still have lots of doors open and lots of options when it comes to what kind of work I want to do. So within mechanical engineering, there are kind of a few focus areas, and actually you could say there's tons of focus areas depending on how specific you want to get, but there's a lot of focus on HVAC, heating, ventilating, and air conditioning, and the movement of air and heat transfer that kind of ties into thermodynamics and all of the, it's kind of a crossover between chemistry and physics, but how we generate power and electricity at power plants relies a lot on mechanical systems and the interplay between mechanical and electrical. And then you also have fields like dynamics, which are really focused on the movement of things. And that's something that's a lot more present in my current role with a robotics focus. And then another aspect of mechanical engineering that crosses over a little bit on the civil side is structural design and how either pieces work together or how they maintain their qualities as they're used over and over again throughout the item's life cycle. So there's lots of different things you can do within mechanical engineering, but it's definitely a good field to focus on if you want variety and want opportunities to work in different areas.
So was there anything that particularly stood out to you in mechanical engineering?
So personally, I was very interested in the heat transfer and thermodynamics aspect. I really liked those classes. To me, they were almost like a puzzle. So it's kind of like math, kind of like logic, but there's obviously fundamentals are based on the science of how the world works, right? How things heat up and cool down. I just found it very interesting how we can control those fundamental features of the earth to make things like electricity. So my first two internships were actually in the power realm, so both in the nuclear power generation industry. And I just really enjoyed it and learned a lot from those experiences.
So what might someone want to do if they choose to go into mechanical engineering?
Well, certainly work in the robotics industry with me. Just kidding. No, there's, I'd say when you enter into mechanical engineering, and this could probably be true for many other types of engineering as well, but you need to think about types of different work styles that you might do. So there is mechanical engineers who focus on simulation and design. So really modeling how a system could be or will operate. There are those who work on testing. So once a system's designed and built, it needs to, the engineers need to verify that it functions as it was designed. And there's different ways of testing that. Sometimes they're destructive tests, sometimes non-destructive. There are also roles within mechanical engineering for installation, right? So overseeing kind of hands-on building of systems or components and all of the kind of oversight and management that goes into that. And similarly, in the same thread is project management. Every field of engineering has project management. I'm sure you have a project manager on your team, but especially as projects get more complex and there's different specialists from different functions of your organization or your school, it's really important to have somebody who's responsible solely for pulling it all together.
Was there any particular moment in high school that was important to college?
Well, I think for me, one of the most important things I learned in high school was the fundamentals of studying and how to make yourself learn something. I was one of those kids that earlier in my education, I could kind of just listen in class, absorb it, and then take a test and not really have to do too much preparation. But as classes got a little bit harder in high school, I realized there are certain styles of studying and preparation that really can help you learn something, and then you can reference back to that later. So that's definitely an important lesson. Another thing to be prepared for in college is time management. So I know that you girls are busy. All high school students are very busy, but when you're in high school, you have most of the time a parent to help you manage your time and make sure that you aren't forgetting anything. When you're in college, you really have to be responsible for all of that on your own, because nobody else is going to be watching over your shoulder, making sure that you're getting all the way there. Maybe you'll get lucky and have a nice roommate who will help you, but it's important to know yourself. Personally, especially when I was younger, was a little bit of absent-minded. I would forget my homework, I would do it and just leave it at home. And it took me time in high school, and I pretty much had it figured out by college, but I had to learn tricks and ways that help me remember things. And that's going to be different for everybody. So it's just knowing yourself, knowing your strengths and your weaknesses, and learning how you can optimize and be as successful as you can be.
Speaking along those lines, were there any important skills you learned in college that were like super useful, or like even in mechanical engineering that were super useful?
I would say one of the most important skills I learned in college was professionalism and communication. So absolutely, you're going to come out of whatever engineering program you select with really good engineering skills. What you might need to work a little harder to polish up, although you girls are already on the right track, are your business and professional communication skills. So it's presenting yourself professionally, knowing how to email professionals, right? When your first internship, sometimes some people might not even have the exposure to know, you write an email professionally, full sentences. You should do things like reference, hey, in the attached document, I've included a file that does A, B, C, D. Could you review it, please? Thank you. And you sign your name, right? So those are maybe seem simple, but they're really important. And I cannot tell you guys how far being a clear communicator will get you in your career. It's absolutely essential. And there are classes that you can take. I had to take one specifically in college that was both oral communication and written. And I've gotten a lot of value out of that over the course of my career.
We all know that STEAM is a male-dominant field. So as a woman, have you faced any struggles in STEAM or in general?
Yeah. So I have to admit, I have been very, very fortunate to, I don't want to say I've never faced discrimination as a woman in STEM, but if I have, it's been something that's minor enough that I let it roll off my back. What I have experienced are mentors, both male and female, who want more diversity in the field, who are willing to help coach and support me so that I can achieve and stay in the engineering field as long as possible. Because really, at the end of the day, if you're a hard worker, people appreciate that. People appreciate your work and your output, and it really stops mattering if you're a male or a female. It's not something that people are super even aware of once you're on a team. Maybe in the beginning and you're kind of feeling people out, understanding the team dynamics, but if you're respectful and you do your work and you come prepared, that is always going to take you far. And so, yeah, I've always kind of taken that attitude, and it's served me well so far.
So did you face any setbacks when you went into the STEAM field? And if so, how did you overcome them?
Yes, lots, I'm sure. Let me think of a good example. So one example of a setback was I was early. This was one of my first opportunities as a on-site engineer. And so I was probably 22 at the time, first year working. And it was kind of a big deal because I was traveling away from my home. I was living in Philadelphia at the time, but this job assignment took me to San Diego. So I was in a place I had never been before, kind of out on my own. And the team that I was overseeing, we had a discrepancy, a disagreement, I'll say. And honestly, it was all a big misunderstanding because the team thought that I had told someone that they weren't working as long as they were working. Meanwhile, that was not the case at all. That I don't know where they got that idea because it was completely untrue. Because I was there with them all day long. I was like, why would I say that? But anyways, the leader of that team, who was a guy a lot older than me, much bigger than me physically, really kind of started yelling at me and screaming, and I was intimidated, right? I didn't cry, but I was like, oh my gosh, like I could have. And I'll admit there are other times when I've cried at work, so don't feel bad if that ever happens to you. But in that moment, I was disappointed that I didn't stand up for myself more, that I just kind of took it. And after the fact, even though I worked to help this individual calm down, understand that, once we were cooler, that never happened and we were able to repair our relationship, it was a setback, right? Because we were there on site, we had been working well together, and then I had to kind of patch things up, which was never easy. You've experienced that in your personal life. So, but the lesson I would say there is you can always repair, whether that's in a relationship or you realize you've made a mistake, you send an email that you didn't mean to, or you messed up on a calculation. The best thing you can do is acknowledge, come back to that person and work it out. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but people respect directness, and everybody wants to work together. At the end of the day, people are people. So everyone, even if you're working in a professional environment on some really cool technical stuff, there's going to be times when you have to work out some of these interpersonal things, and it's just something that you have to take those steps one step at a time. And honestly, that gentleman, by the end of the project, we were back like this again. So that's just to say that, setbacks happen, disagreements happen, but the only way to get through it is to take those steps.
That's very inspiring. Was there anything that inspired you to pursue a career in STEAM?
Yes, I would say definitely the support of my parents, because I didn't know anyone who was an engineer. I didn't even really know about engineering, but my parents saw some potential in me, and they really encouraged me, obviously, to do whatever I wanted, but they thought, we think you'd like this. I'd also say I've had some really great science teachers over the years, particularly my science teacher in elementary school in 7th and 8th grade. And she was just a really passionate person, very committed to making science fun. And every year we would work on the science fair. The Pennsylvania Junior Academy of Science is a big science fair here. And she taught me the scientific method. And honestly, that same method that I learned as a 7th grader, you use in high school, you use in college, I use in my professional life. So I owe a lot of my inspiration to my teachers and my parents.
They all sound like very inspirational figures. It sounds like you've achieved a lot. Is there something you've achieved that you're really proud of?
Yes, I would say. So one of the most recent projects we got to work on was that through my current job at Advance Robotics Manufacturing, we were able to receive some funding that came out from the COVID-19 Recovery Act. right? So it came through the federal government. There was funding dedicated to all sorts of different things, but a piece of that funding was for robotic solutions to the challenges of COVID-19. And I was kind of the lead within our organization for this effort. And we were able to very quickly use our whole consortium of members, different organizations, universities, companies. We all came together and we were able to stand up and execute 9 projects across different aspects of COVID-19 recovery, whether it was production of PPE, personal protective equipment like masks, or using robotic systems to disinfect spaces like warehouses. But we were able to select these 9 projects, bring the teams together, execute them, see them through to their conclusion with the final demo over the course of a year. And then we had a virtual summit where we brought all those teams together and showcased our results. And I'm really proud of that because it was something that we did in a hard time for our country. And the results of those projects are already making their way into the industry to help mitigate the results of COVID-19 and hopefully, prevent a pandemic like that from happening again at the same scale.
That sounds super cool and super useful situation now. You've talked about like bouncing back from setbacks. Was there anything that helped motivate you in general or in STEAM?
Yes, I would say to bounce back from setbacks, you really have to understand your why, why you're part of a team, why you're part of an organization, what motivates you as a person. And for me personally, I take a lot of pride in my work and the quality of my work and basically the mission of the organization that I'm working for. So I think as long as you keep those things in the forefront of your mind, it's not hard when you have a setback to get back up on the horse, as they say, because, it's not just about you, it's about this thing that's greater than you, or perhaps your value system. And a little setback can hurt your ego, can hurt your feelings. But when you keep focused on those bigger ideals, it's easy to continue forward and keep working.
So we've talked a bit about diversity in STEAM. What are your thoughts on diversity in STEAM?
Well, diversity in STEAM is so critically important. I mean, diversity across everything we do, really. I believe to my core that teams are better when we have a wide array of personalities, backgrounds, and skills. Diversity in all different types, racial, gender, even socioeconomic backgrounds. These bring variety to our groups and allow us to see things in different ways that are so valuable. I also think it's really important to support diversity initiatives because sometimes people are set back a little bit, right? They don't have the same opportunities leading up to the point of application. So having groups set up, having teams set up that can help mentor and encourage people, because ultimately everyone is capable of the same output. They just might need some additional resources initially to get there. And the result of that, of having more diverse teams, is valuable to everybody. So it's worth the investment and it's worth the time and effort to make that a reality. And one other thing I'll say is that throughout my career, I've always been involved in things that are called like employee resource groups. So these are, the women's engineering group or the Black Engineers Forum. And clearly I'm not a Black engineer, but I made so many good relationships by going to their events, learning, about their experiences, making friends, and vice versa. They would come to my events. And So I just think I want to put a plug in there. Most organizations these days have these types of groups. And I'd say, I really encourage you to go, and not just to one that you feel like fits you, right? They're open to everyone. We had men who would come to our women's groups. And it's just a really good opportunity to connect with people and support each other.
That sounds amazing, and I'm glad we're taking such big steps. Do you have any advice for someone who wants to go into the fields of STEAM?
Yeah, absolutely. My advice is, and this goes to anybody, you can do it if you want to do it. I think sometimes there's a lot of awe around people going into the field of engineering or STEAM in general. Like, wow, oh my gosh, that's going to be tough. It might be challenging, but certainly anybody who's willing to put in the work is going to be able to do this. There's no magic behind it. It's just everything builds on each other. So you start from the fundamentals with your math and your science in high school, and you build on that, baby steps all the way. And the second piece of advice is a little more practical, but especially when you get into college, you really should take advantage of the office hours that your professors have. All professors have office hours, so you have your class time, a few times throughout the week, and then most of them are required to host open office hours. And a lot of times people don't take advantage of it. I didn't in my early years of college until I learned that's like the secret method, right? You go, you get to know your professor, you can ask them questions, they can talk you through a problem, maybe a little slower, maybe a little faster. It's personalized to you, whereas in class, and I even went to a school where, our class sizes weren't that big, but even if it's like 20 or 30 people, they're just going at the speed of the class. You maybe don't feel as comfortable asking a silly question. So office hours are a wonderful place to go. You can even be like, hey, I'm working through my homework and I wanted to see your thought process on question number 2. It's a great way to learn how they approach a problem. And then you can start to, replicate that in your own work. So that would be my advice for you guys.
So thank you, Cara, for your time today, from talking to us about your previous experiences and for your piece of advice. Before we sign off, do you have any questions for our team?
I don't have any questions today, but I just want to thank you both for having me. Thank you for doing this and putting, work into making this information available for other viewers who might be interested. And I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. So thank you all for watching Spark Plug. We have more to come from this series as our season has started, the 2021 to 2022 First Tech Challenge Fight Frenzy. Stay tuned for more about our team and the new season. Bye.